business owner, and she works as a rural mail carrier. They homeschool their oldest children. She homeschools with her children, and in October of 2019, Alexis co-founded Health Freedom North Dakota. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and again, she is the president. Welcome, Alexis.
Oh man, I can't believe it. We're already at our third event for their tour. Oh, I'm so excited to be here today. So thank you so much for having me and having these ladies. What a turnout. Like, can we just, like, you guys give yourselves a round of applause for being here and wanting to stay indoors. I think that was awesome. So as Karen said, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I just wanted to quickly share some details with you. So our mission is to educate North Dakotans on various healthcare treatments to help develop and advocate for healthcare policies that expand freedom and to protect consumers from fraud, harm, and misinformation. We actually began as strangers. We began as strangers to protect everyone against forced medical intervention. That's how we began our nonprofit. We decided this is what we need to do, is we need to have a nonprofit protect health freedom in the state of North Dakota. So quickly, I just wanted to mention there is an informational registration form here. I had some issues with getting it together, unfortunately, but if you'd be willing to fill this out so that you can stay up to date with all the latest information that Health Freedom North Dakota is doing, that would be so wonderful. And the QR code, the ones that we have here tonight, I did get it updated, but didn't get them printed yet. It is not working, but if you would like to make a donation, we are so very grateful. There has been some questions in regards to the donations on who supports our organization. It's you guys, literally. We do not have anyone who's got buku bucks that just throws money at us. It has literally been you guys who have helped us to successfully fulfill our mission and our vision for health freedom in North Dakota. So thank you again. I truly appreciate it. I feel the love and support, and it means more to me than you'll ever know. If you would like to make a donation financially, you can visit our website at www.healthfreedomnd.org/donate. Or you can, of course, Venmo, PayPal, or send a check through snail mail made out to Health Freedom North Dakota. And again, it's a 501c3 tax-deductible donation. If anyone would like to make a $100 donation, please make sure that you let us know you did that. We're going to give away 3 different beanies for those who do that. They are super warm. I love having them on the mail route. I wear it all the time. So it will keep you warm in winter, which is what we need here in North Dakota. So we've got options for you in navy, red, or black. Okay, I think that is all I had for you. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to the experts, the reason why you're all here. So please welcome Tammy, Clark, and Kristen Meghan Kelly.
Well, hello there. Do I have a mic? Do I have a mic? Hello? Is that better? Okay. All right, so, say that again.
I think we have 30.
Okay, so just keeping us on track because everyone has been a little bit different time-wise, so we're trying to keep ourselves on time with our bullet points here. But it's great to be here with you all. This is a really cool town. I mean, it's been really cool driving all across the state. It's beautiful. I didn't realize how beautiful so much of the state is because I've been here a couple of times, but I haven't driven across the whole entire state like we have the last couple of days. So it's great to be with you. My name is Tammy Clark. This is my colleague, Kristen Meghan Kelly, and I just want to give you a brief intro just to tell you a little bit about us, who we are, and so you kind of know why we're in this fight, why are we here with you guys, and why is our field of expertise the field of expertise that people should be listening to, and like other issues we have dealt with, they're not. And the abandonment of the multidisciplinary approach when it comes to managing health and safety, both human and environmental, is critically important. And it has existed since the 1950s, when the government put that protocol and that structure in place. So we met each other in 2020 because I, as an exposure scientist, we were both exposure scientists, industrial hygienists, occupational and environmental health and safety professionals. I know that's a mouthful. Kristen's going to explain what that is and what it is we do. But in 2020, we were dealing with some things, remember those fun times, and because of my profession, I knew things were being handled very, very wrong, and I did not know what was going on, and I didn't know what to do or say, because as a government trained professional, watching the government do things that are completely contrary to what I was trained on during pandemic response, I didn't know what to say, and I kind of lost my mind, and I was just like, what is happening? What is going on here? And I was just literally mind blown for a couple of weeks. And I happened to be listening to a radio program one day, and I heard this gal saying the exact same things I was saying, and as I listened, I realized she's me. She is an industrial hygienist. She works in OEHS. She does what I do. Oh my gosh, we're saying the same things. So I quickly reached out to her, to our radio host friend, and realized we live in the same region of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We only live 30 miles apart from each other. So I reached out. It was a totally divine connection because within a few years, we've become known globally as the dynamic duo. We've traveled all the way to the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, testified on the steps of the World Health Organization during the pandemic when they tried to alter the treaty amendments, things like that to preserve individual health freedoms. And that's how we met. That's what we've been involved in. And the last couple of years, we've just been able to go back to normal life, and we've been really enjoying it. And then we get a call from a friend of ours who we know mutually, who said, I think I need your help. They're trying to put in this Hyperscale DataCenter right across the street from my multi-generational family farm, and it's going to be worth nothing if they do this. She was in a very little town called Mason, Michigan, and I said, what? What's happening? And this was about 8 months ago now, and this is the first I had heard of the Hyperscale DataCenter invasion. And so as I started asking questions and studying it and looking at it, I contacted Kristen and I said, there's something really wrong going on here, and I think we need to take a look at this, because if what they're saying is happening the way that they're saying it's happening, we're going to have some very serious human, environmental, and animal harms. So that's how we got involved in this fight, because it's those of us in our profession that take a deep dive and we look at processes. We work with engineers, we look at system designs, we look at everything from noise, light, radiation, ergonomics, everything related to an exposure hazard, and we put in the best control measures to reduce or eliminate those hazards to protect people in the workplace and in the public at large, because occupational settings and occupational hazards can very quickly become public hazards, community hazards, and they can also become environmental issues. So we work as regulatory compliance experts with OSHA, EPA, DOT. We work in the fields of regulatory compliance with industries from commercial agriculture, industrial, commercial manufacturing, healthcare facilities, commercial construction projects, you name it. If your workplace creates a hazard, whatever it is, it's our job to recognize it and to control it, to keep people, animals, and the environment safe. So I'm going to let Kristen do a little bit deeper dive into our profession and why it is what we're saying is credible and what we know from our experience with similar type of industries, even though this hyperscale industry is very new and it's something that our government agencies are not even prepared to handle, and that's why they're not. They're just looking the other way because they don't know what to do with permitting and all that kind of stuff. So that's why we're here.
Well, thank you. I'm Kristen Meghan, and yes, I have two first names and a third first name. But I have been doing this job for 24 years, and 9 of it I did on active duty in the Air Force, working in bio-environmental engineering. So like Tammy said, we are like the civilian OSHA, EPA, DOT, and for me also the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because I'm a former radiation and laser safety officer. So like Tammy was explaining, our whole job, let me just explain why we're emphasizing on this. Regardless of what we have our hand in, usually our detractors or our haters will say, wow, they sure like to put their hands in everything. Actually, we don't. I like to be a normie and watch football, but our professions touches around 19 different disciplines. And we fall under total worker health for public health, because think about it. Even if you're going into a grocery store or we spend most of our time in someone else's workplace, right? So we have to make sure that we're anticipating, recognizing, evaluating, controlling a whole myriad of health hazards. And making sure that what's happening in an occupational, industrial, commercial, every setting, medical setting. I did my job at a huge electrical utility company. We have to make sure that those hazards are not bleeding out into the community like Tammy stated. Because as you know, OSHA and EPA are the organizations at the federal level and some state levels that are designed to protect the worker. But who is out there to protect you? And that's the question, because a lot of times, even though we fall under public health, a lot of industrial hygienists are not embedded in community public health offices, and they absolutely should be, because my big thing is stay in your own lane, and I will always stay in mine, and if you ask me a question I don't know, I will tell you. But too often people try to cross into our world. In this profession, you might be able to do safety, but you can't always do health, but the health people also do safety. So I know a lot about data centers that have existed for a long time, and I just want to preface by saying we are not anti-data centers. I'm not anti-innovation, I'm not anti-technology. I've been into crypto mining before it was cool. Back in 2011, I actually had to study the hazards of different crypto centers that use a different form of technology that's safer. So we're not against these things. We're against the reckless rollout of hyperscale data centers, which by the way, we don't need. They're already outdated, and we'll get into that. Smaller data centers, you have edge, standard structure, edge, co-location, hyperscale. The smaller data centers have been storing your banking information, your health information, and then co-location data centers are kind of leased out. You just kind of lease the servers, and different businesses can participate in that. So data centers are not new. So if you're someone who has a pin or a sign that says no data centers, I would tell you to write on there with the marker, hyperscale data centers, because they are not all created equal. So we're going to go and dive into the different types of hazards associated with these larger data centers and what you can do about it. And I first want to say, we never over-exaggerate health hazards, but in this profession, until you can prove an exposure is below a certain standard, we have to treat it as the worst case scenario. And what I will tell you is, every single thing that we cover, when we talk about the tonal noise, the water issue, the air emissions, all of that, all of the data and regulations are based off of an 8-hour shift, also known as an 8-hour TWA, also known as a time-weighted average. Who expected to take industrial hazards and commercial hazards and shove them right next to schools and housing communities at 24/7 exposures? Those studies don't exist, but we do have after-action reports and observational studies. So I'm going to have Tammy kind of dive into why is North Dakota so enticing to these developers. Oh, I can yell.
Do we need to shout for those in the back? We can do that. We're moms. We can yell really loud. Okay, but now you guys up front are going to be blown out of the room. Sorry guys. Okay, so why North Dakota? Well, Kristen and I have been all over the heartland states, and you guys are very similar in the targeting to states like Kansas and Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, because you're very rural agricultural areas. You have access to water. You have access to electrical. The transmission lines have been built out for quite a while. This has been going on for decades, actually. And you have very loose zoning. In fact, most of your zoning is simply agriculture. And so when you throw in the fact that farmers and ranchers have been struggling for a long time, and sometimes the next generation doesn't want to take over the family farms, and so mom and dad think, oh, we're getting this offer to lease for wind or solar or battery. We have data centers wanting to buy our land. Great. You're thinking generational wealth. This is an answer to prayer. But we all know that anything that sounds too good to be true is too good to be true. Okay, so North Dakota and these heartland states have been very targeted, and actually, Larry Fink of BlackRock and the World Economic Forum did a symposium in Kansas, in Sedgwick County, where we were, and they came right out and said, this is a target for us. This is very easy. This is an easy area and an easy section of the country to set up shop. And so they have been targeting, actually, the heartland states for many years. So let's talk just for a minute about the promises. Now, some of these promises have materialized with some people, but the majority of those that we have talked to, that I have talked to, in county commission meetings I've been a part of, city council meetings, even talking with your legislative committees, your Senate committees in some of these different states, I'm hearing the complaints that the leases, the payments, the promises, after a while, do not continue to extend down the road as what they were initially promised and what those initial payments look like. Why is that? Well, there's many different reasons, and if you go to any of these committee meetings, these county board meetings, you'll hear the farmers and ranchers and your neighbors complaining about why. Much of what we've seen, starting with solar, because wind and solar were some of the first to come in, they have seen the companies go bankrupt, the companies sell to another company, the payments stop coming in. Now they're left with something that they cannot possibly decommission, deconstruct, or remediate. The soil has been contaminated. The soil has been altered because of compaction. Now you have different water runoff. Now you have chemicals in the soils. I can't just take that solar field, miles of solar field, and now turn that back into profitable farmland. So these farmers and ranchers are complaining that they're being stuck with something that is not at all like what they were promised. I've heard the term empty promises over and over again in these board meetings and with state legislative bodies all across the heartland states. This applies to wind as well. Look at the big wind disaster that we just had. I'm sure you've seen it, it's all over social media, with all those wind towers that are supposed to operate on wind that have been destroyed and have destroyed the farmers' fields and the lands, and the farmers are all up in arms. Many of them I've heard them say from similar situations, who's going to pay for this? And it's crickets from the company, right? And then it turns into lawsuits. And in the meantime, what does that mean for that farmer or that rancher? Loss of income. Now they've got a lawsuit on their hands. So this is what we are seeing and we're hearing all across the country. Then you throw in the battery. We're talking about the lithium batteries. We're talking about data center environmental contaminants, and then you put in the human and animal contaminants. It is a real problem, and the heartland states are now reacting to what we saw put in place over the last couple of years. That promise is not continuing to be fulfilled, and now people are put into a reactive position. I'm not saying everybody, but a large majority of people are realizing this is not what we were promised. This is why the agricultural communities are being targeted, the farmlands. Okay, zoning we're going to talk about later, but agricultural zoning is one of the problems. So with the surrounding communities that we have, one of the problems is that once you lose the character, and I'm not saying every data center is like this, okay? Please understand, like Kristen said, we are not anti-technology or anti-progress or innovation. We use ChatGPT and Cloud. It's not that we don't, because they can be great resources and tools for us in our work. It's just that we have to be very careful how to use it. Okay, and we understand that what is happening here and the promise of these data centers, these hyperscales coming in, is not being driven by an organic demand. Okay, we don't need hyperscale data centers, and Kristen's going to touch on this in just a little bit too, to meet the demands for computational output. We just don't. The state of Virginia already has more data centers than all of China. And look what China's doing. Right? They control every single movement of every citizen with fewer data centers, smaller footprints, and yet we're being told that we need to beat China. Who cares about China? I'm not competing with them. All they do is copy everything we do. Let them do their thing. Right? We don't need this for the computational outputs that we're looking at here in the United States. So just understand that that's where we're coming from with the background of the heartland states being so targeted. And it's spreading. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Kristen now. Let's get into some of the environmental issues, human and environmental impacts.
I just want to update you on life. We had an hour, so.
Oh, yeah.
We have to like train.
Okay.
All right, so as we get into now the human, environmental, and animal health hazards, I want to remind everyone that you are here tonight under the umbrella of the most uniting issue in this country. We have been all over, and it's amazing because it doesn't matter if you're left, right, in the middle, or anti-government. We all are being impacted by our shared resources being threatened, our property values plummeting, and we all are Okay, sorry.
You gotta eat
Yeah,
the mic.
I mean, I can yell, so.
You gotta hold it really
I'm a
close.
Bears fan, I can scream. No, but my point, hopefully I'm not gonna
There you
shoot.
go.
Okay, so my point is that none of this is political. So just hopefully you guys are all comfortable with that. We are so glad this is such a unifying issue because we are all victims to the reckless rollout. So to me, when I am conducting a health risk assessment as an industrial hygienist on any company, I kind of triage hazards. And to me, the most hazardous issue of hyperscale data centers is something called tonal noise, with an N, tonal. It's also called infrasound. When I was in the Air Force, we had to do a lot of study on total noise and the vibrations from the low frequency because of, I worked in the fetal protection program. That meant like pregnant people in the Air Force. We had to make sure that what the job that they were doing was not impacting their milk production or fetal development, and even if they're, after they had their child, could they still be impacted with their milk production? Because there are chemicals that can leach into the breast milk. Now I bring this up because I've known about tonal noise for years, and it was also used as an older military torture technique. Now tonal noise, you have to think about how light is a spectrum, noise is a spectrum. And tonal noise is on the lower frequency end, and most noise ordinances around the country in different communities are only addressing the audible hazardous noise. So when you hear a data center developer, this is my favorite thing. It's like as a woman going to buy a car, I know about cars.
You gotta speak a little slower.
Okay, sorry. It's Hispanic in me. So when I go to buy a car, people assume women don't know about cars. Well, when I'm in a meeting with a data center developer explaining to the community, and they talk about the 55 decibels at the fence, and then I stand up and I say, decibels A, C, or Z? Are you gonna do an octave band analysis? And they're like, oh no. Because when you're checking for tonal noise, it is not measured in dBA. That is audible hazardous noise. It is measured in dBc. That dB is the decibels, C is in Charlie, Z is in Zulu, with an instrument called a sound level meter doing an octave band analysis, checking all the dominance in those different bands and frequencies. Now, tonal noise is noise that you feel, not necessarily that you hear, but it is a low hum. Tonal noise has been known to elevate cortisol levels in the body. This is for humans and animals. Now that is a stress hormone that can disrupt sleep. It can cause behavioral changes, irritability, insomnia. The stress levels on expectant mothers is it can elevate the maternal and fetal heart rate, which can lead to low-term birth or like low birth weight or early birth. These issues are not negligible. And again, all of these studies of these human and environment animal impacts, again, are based on 8 hours of exposure. We are talking about 24/7 where they're not shutting them down, they don't turn off. Tonal noise is something that is targeted towards the elderly, again, those expectant mothers, the chronically ill, because some individuals have pacemakers. It can disrupt pacemakers. Children, their frontal lobe isn't fully developed until a certain age. That's the decision making. It can impede their reading comprehension, their concentration in school, and their decision making. So you're going to see heightened behavioral changes, especially in neurodivergent children who are more aware and have sound sensitivities. So this tonal noise, when it comes to animals, these same issues apply. But if you're a rancher or you're a dairy farmer, this can disrupt milk production because it alters their behavior in foraging and feeding and alters their libido for the mating cycles. For equestrian, like for horses and people that have equestrian farms, they have been known to hit their heads on the fence, called self-harm, because what that tonal noise does to humans and animals is your brain cannot filter out that tonal noise, and it puts your brain into a fight or flight mode. And that constant living in fight or flight mode has such biological impacts on the body, and I don't know if anyone has ever suffered from insomnia and what that does to your mental health and your other health issues. Again, it's non-negligible. Now, although there are limited studies, there are studies on how it disrupts crops. Has anyone ever seen those old videos where they're playing like Mozart or classical music to their plants? Tonal noise noise can affect crop production. And again, this is an observation study, but farmers and ranchers have come up to us on the road and gone to the media to explain when they are next to a hyperscale data center, they have had stillbirths of their cattle and lower outcomes of chickens laying eggs. Sorry for my words, I'm not a farmer, so. But these are issues that can be mitigated if the hyperscale data centers and other data centers implement proper engineering controls. For example, the jobs, all 7 of them that come to a hyperscale data center site after the contractors leave, in their offices, they have to put in engineering controls to protect the worker under OSHA standards. Meaning, for example, they have walls that are hollow, and it'll be like a wall and then a hollow space and another wall to help lessen that tonal noise. Why, do you ask? Because it travels so far. And people will ask me, is there a safe setback? No, because it depends on what other buildings are around it. Because sometimes when they put in these hyperscale data centers, they put them next to each other. Now you're talking about increased dose and concentration. But they can put these servers, because basically it's just a giant like IT building. These giant servers can be put onto springs. They can be put onto materials that absorbs the vibration and the tonal noise. Otherwise, they just throw them on cement slabs and they go right through the cement slab. They go through the foundation. It goes right through windows. It can crack windows. Tonal noise goes far. And the worst part is, it's more prevalent at night. So when you are talking to these developers and I say, why aren't you doing constant monitoring? They're like, well, we did it upon build. There are certain times where when these servers get heated, the fans have to go on higher instead of low speed. When you have higher fan speeds, you're gonna have more of that tonal noise. And also, DBA, the audible noise, no one's mowing their lawn at 1 a.m., right? Like most people are not on the road at that time. So when you have less of the audible noise, the tonal noise becomes more prevalent to the body. So this is something that I would like you guys all to look into for yourself. These are studies that have been around for years, but you won't see them regarding hyperscale data centers because an absence of a standard rule or study is not an absence of a hazard, because these regulatory agencies have not caught up to this massive increase in a human health issue. So another issue is the water. And I'm going to have Tammy cover that because, again, that brings into the fact that the regulations have not caught up with a lot of the water issues.
So water has been one of the biggest talking points, and this is one of the things that's really concerned Kristen and I, because working with the EPA, working in the outdoor, in the built environment, okay, more, I need to eat it, really eat it? Okay. So working in the outdoor and built environment with EPA, we know just through our environmental work that much of the country, most of the country, is experiencing some cyclical drought cycles right now. And your area and your region is not exempt from that. Now, North Dakota does not draw most of its water from aquifers, but that doesn't matter. North Dakota draws most of its water from rivers. Missouri River, the Red River, Cheyenne River, and river basins, but that doesn't matter because the outside of an aquifer, a basin is much more susceptible to drought more quickly. And even when you do get heavy rains and you see the ponds and the rivers come back up, that doesn't mean that the areas that are drawing water off of aquifers are all good now, because it takes time for that recharge station to refill and replenish the aquifer. So you guys, particularly in North Dakota, are also drawing a lot of water, and your water needs should go towards the communities and the cities and what's called the ag pull. You're all familiar with that more than I am, right? You have a lot of agriculture pull here. That's where your water should go first and foremost into the citizens, not to these data centers to cool their servers. So why is that happening? Why is it that we have been dealing all over this country? You're seeing the YouTube videos. You're seeing the lawsuits now from entire cities and towns that are suing the data centers because their wells have gone dry. The water is trickling. They have no more water pressure around the data centers, or their water has changed colors. It's now brown. Well, that's a real thing. People have asked Kristen and I, is that a thing? Can our water change colors or what? Yes, it's a thing, because when you start drawing out of that water, you actually change with the amount of water. When it reduces, you increase the nutrients and the nitrates in particular. And you all, as farmers and ranchers, know a lot more about nitrates than most people. Nitrates concentrated in water are very unhealthy. They're carcinogenic. And we have seen communities all over this country develop cancer clusters, and when the water has been tested, it's been found to be very high in nitrate concentration because the water chemistry has changed due to the the drained reservoirs and their basins, their aquifers, in which those data centers are drawing 100,000 gallons a day up to maybe 5 million. It depends on the size of the data center. So we should not be allowing them access to our water. You know why? They don't need it. Newsflash, they don't need water. There are alternative cooling systems available. They're using them all across Europe because Europe has a lot stricter standards than the United States does. They are not allowing them to access and use water the way that we're doing it here in the US. So they're using alternative cooling systems like immersion cooling, like dielectrics, like the synthetic liquids that 3M has developed, geothermal cooled, underground, sea cooling, like what China's doing, embedded in the seabed for natural cooling. Orbital, we're going to get into that shortly. You're going to hear a lot about that because it's not going to be long and these data centers are going to be in outer space. Because the size of the data centers is shrinking so much that we simply do not need hyperscale data centers, ever. We don't need them. We're going to get into, okay, then why this mad rush with all these hyperscale data centers? We're actually going to talk about that in just a minute. But let me just say, one of the requirements, because Kristen and I, everywhere we go, people ask us, okay, then what should we do? How should we approach this then? So we tell them, the greatest thing that you can do, if you're a legislator, if you sit on a county commission board, if you sit on a local planning or zoning board, city, township board, the best thing you can do is, number one, take a look at your zoning. Does your zoning fit the footprint of a heavy industrial facility trying to come into your community? If it does, and you feel like, yep, we've got all this area designated for heavy industrial, we could probably plop one right here. Okay, then the next thing you need to ask yourselves are these questions. Requirements. In real estate, we call them requirements. Okay, number one, what's your cooling system going to be? Because you're not going to be allowed access to any of our municipal water, our rivers, our lakes, our basins, our aquifers, none, not a drop. That's number one requirement after siting. Okay, the siting is very important because they should never be in close proximity, like Kristen talked about, to people, schools, communities, homes, or farms, where you are relying on your farms for agriculture, cattle, beef, those reasons, because you're going to affect your lifestyle, your livelihood, with your animals being negatively impacted as well. So the siting is important. So where should they be sited? Well, that's an easy question. Look for a Superfund site. A Superfund site is an area in which there has been some massive contamination to the point that the EPA has declared it uninhabitable, and it is a Superfund site. Areas like East Palestine, Ohio. Kristen and I were some of the first people there after the train derailment and that accident, that controlled burn. We were there and we said, oh my gosh, this entire town needs to be rehomed. These people should not be coming back in here because of the incredible contaminants that whole town was covered with, because the train derailment happened about 100 yards from downtown. So that whole area should have been evacuated. It wasn't, but that's a whole other story and lawsuit that we were involved in against the EPA. But that area should have been declared a Superfund site, and that's what we said. There are areas like that around the country. Brownfields. Brownfields are also areas that are contaminated. Like maybe you had a tannery. Maybe you had a dry cleaner area that is contaminated, previous gas stations. Those types of facilities that contaminate not only that particular location, but the locations all around them, sometimes will be classified as brownfields and people aren't living there, but the soil is very contaminated and needs to be remediated. Who cares? Let the company remediate it. We're talking about billion-dollar tech companies here. Okay, that's on them. If they want to come in and build, it's on them to meet the requirements. And if they can't, then they don't belong there. And so that's another requirement you need to put on them. So let's talk about, with water, what are some of the problems? Because I have been in meetings, and I have heard the developers say, oh, don't worry, we're using a closed loop system. And so I always ask them, well, so what are you using for cooling though? Because if they're using a closed loop system where water is involved at all, then it's not truly closed loop. Even if they're using synthetics, it's still not closed loop. But I don't really care if they have to blow down and discharge and replace their synthetics, as long as they're doing that properly and they're not contaminating the land. What I care about is avoiding our fresh water, because we really need to protect and preserve that. Water is becoming a commodity that is now being traded. Did you know that? Water scarcity is one of the hottest topics right now, and they're even trading water rights. That's one of the reasons wealthy people are buying up huge tracts of land across the heartland, because they want access to the water. So that's one of my biggest concerns. Okay, now, when it comes to alternative cooling systems, they can have a closed loop system, that's fine. Every now and then, whether it contains water, like glycol is usually 50% water, or an alternative synthetic liquid, occasionally they'll still have to completely discharge, and that's called blowdown, and then replenish. Because after a while, that water picks up anti-corrosives, anti-scaling agents, biocides, and it gets contaminated, so they've got to clean that out and replenish it. And with the synthetics, after a while, it just gets to be sludgy. That's the best way they've described it to me. I'm like, okay, I get that. Sludgy. It's got to be cleaned out, just like your radiator fluid. Every now and then, you got to clean it out, it gets gunky, and replenish it. So when it comes to water, it's still getting picked up, it's being lost through the evaporative cooling process, and it's having to get discharged, blown down, and replaced. When it comes to chemicals, we need to make sure that the chemicals are being treated and that our environment is not being poisoned by the chemical blowdown and the discharge as well. The problem that we're seeing with data centers, I'm not talking about the traditional data centers that have existed for a long time, because they are already under compliance rules and inspection rules by OSHA and EPA. It's these new hyperscale facilities that nobody knows what to do with, so they're not even doing initial environmental impact studies that is required from every other commercial and industrial facility. That's against the law, but nobody's asking for it, nobody's demanding to see it, and so they're just not doing it. Water studies, they're not providing those. So these are very serious issues that we see and we talk about, especially when we're trying to provide guidance and a checklist of requirements that you as a board member should put into place when you're dealing with data center executives. You simply need to have these requirements in place. And look, we're not saying it can't be done, because we have seen and we have talked with companies like over in Europe where it is being done. And it's being done efficiently, effectively, and safely. So we're not against data centers. We're against, like Kristen said, this reckless, irresponsible, and dangerous rollout, this mass invasion to just, grab as much as they can while they can get the tax subsidies that were still there from the Biden era clean initiative, tax incentives that were still available. That's why the mad rush. That's why, they were talking to legislators and board members and telling them all these great things, promising them the moon so that they could get it okay, get that permit in place before the sunset on these tax incentives. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but these are things that you need to be aware of, because you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And then from there, moving forward, you can best protect your community. And if you do feel like you have space in your community for some growth, do it manageably and do it responsibly. We're good with that. Like we said, we're not trying to stop technology or growth or innovation. We're just trying to do it responsibly. Okay, so I've talked about the blowdown a little bit. PFAS concerns. Are you guys familiar with PFAS? Okay, that is a forever chemical, and it's a real problem because with the contamination of this, they are being allowed to get away with this blowdown that is not being controlled, just like what Ohio EPA is just allowing them to do in Ohio by discharging into the river. Okay, whether it's water or whether it's synthetic, it doesn't matter. Your water is being contaminated, and you guys draw most of your drinking water in North Dakota from rivers. So what happens is the water treatment facilities cannot handle those types of chemicals. They do not have the filtering media to filter out those types of chemicals. Okay, and so either it's your aquifers and your wells are being contaminated from direct contamination, or your water treatment facilities, if it does make its way into a municipality, cannot be treated properly because they simply don't have the filtering media. So these are all very serious issues. So you need to be actually asking questions of them. You need to have these intelligent talking points, asking these types of questions and not letting them get away with saying things like, oh, don't worry, we use a closed loop system. They understand, most people don't understand what that means. Okay, that doesn't mean you're safe and you're not going to use water and you're not going to contaminate our waters. So our policymakers also need to catch up with this so that they can put global safeguards in place at the local, township, and county levels and at the state legislature levels. And so everybody's scrambling right now, which is why we're also traveling right now, trying to educate as many people as we can to help you, the legislators and the board members, get these things in place and be able to have these conversations and know what's going on right now, what's coming in the near future, and what sort of global safeguards. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to talk about air quality.
Yeah, I just want to add, and I don't think you said it, but these developers will say, we're following the EPA regulations, but there are no regulations for PFAS. And it's like poly or per, it's poly or per, it's both fluoroalkali substances. And in the soil, it's called PNAS. So there are no regulations on these forever chemicals. I know that's shocking because we spend a lot of time talking about it even on the news, but how can you follow rules that don't exist? So another issue is I tell people that when you are going to look on your county websites, louder. I am going to speak louder. Sorry, I had something in my mouth. I'm trying to talk loud, guys. I had something in my mouth. So anyway, when we're talking about what you need to look for in your community, that is checking on your county websites. It's different everywhere around the country, but they have to go somewhere in your state to get approval for diesel generator air permits. That's the first thing they do, because if they cannot get the diesel air generator permits, they just move on, because they need a copious amount of these generators. Now, why do they need permit for generators? Maybe some of you already know, because of places that you work, you have different tier emissions. Tier 1 through 4, you have to work with the environmental agencies of your state or sometimes federal. You're only allowed to release something called PM 2.5. That stands for particulate matter that is equal to or less than 2.5 microns, which is 30 times smaller than one strand of a human hair. And the reason that's so hazardous to human health is because PM 2.5 small particulates are more likely to be inhaled into the deep lung. So if a company has emissions, they have to report. Sometimes it's quarterly, semi-annual, annual. They have to report and test their emissions. That's because you can't have all these different companies releasing PM 2.5 at the same time. You have to allow, like with these two doors open, that's called dilution and cross-ventilation. You have that outside. So with these diesel generators, I'm not talking about a small one on your property or your business. The average hyperscale data center has anywhere from 150 to 400 giant Connex box size generators. And usually under the current standards of emission, they can only test like a handful of those at a time. So what happens is, even though say they're testing 20 one day, weekly or monthly, they have to turn around and then the next day test another set and test another set. So you have that constant exposure for days. And that is volatile organic compounds and dioxins. Okay, volatile organic compounds are carcinogenic and have neurodegenerative impacts. Now, again, I'm not saying just because this is happening that everyone's going to develop some sort of, health condition, but you can't be downwind of 200 to 400 generators that are being tested weekly and monthly without some sort of control measure in place. And they need these backup generators because if there's a power outage, they have lithium-ion batteries that first kick on while the generators, they're not instant. It takes a moment for them to warm up because these are not supposed to shut off. Again, these hyperscale data centers operate on a 24/7 basis. Now, a lot of times we talk about the initial, the operational hazards, like once the hyperscale data center is built. But what about the construction? Because that's usually around 2 years. And the construction trucks come in and they kick up a lot of dust. They kick up a lot of particulates that can affect different people that have already pre-existing respiratory issues. They create audible hazardous noise. And during construction and upon build, we'll get into that in just a moment, but because of security and because of OSHA standards for the 7 to 10 employees that are working around the clock on different shifts, they have to have lighting. And light pollution is a real issue, so I'm going to hand it back to Tammy to explain that.
Yeah, one of the reasons that they have the illumination and the lighting issues that they do is because of security. I know I'm supposed to shout. I'm trying. I can't shout in a normal voice forever. Only when I'm scolding somebody for a minute. So I'll try to be louder. But these facilities have to have 24/7 lighting because of security issues. Okay, they are not just computing data; they are storing data. What does that mean? That makes them a security target. That's another reason we don't want them next to your neighborhood or your school. So the lighting is a real security issue, and what that does though is it creates pollution in your communities. So being exposed to light, this amount of light 24/7, because they really can't turn it off. It does cause sleep apnea, causes sleep disruption, it causes sleep disorders. It can even cause cardiovascular issues as a result of increased cortisol and stress. Again, it doesn't affect the brain the same way as total noise does, but it does affect the brain. Sleep deprivation is also a form of torture. And many people living near these facilities say it is so bright in their homes, even in the middle of the night, they can walk around and see perfectly light. I'm one who's very sensitive to light. I can't even have a nightlight on in the bedroom because I can see that light through my closed eyelids and it will keep me awake. I have to have it dark. A lot of people are like that. Light will keep you awake. It will keep you from getting into deep sleep. That affects your health, that affects your physical health, that affects your mental health. After a while, like Kristen said, when you can't sleep, it begins to cause, in some people, suicidal ideations. That's why it was used as a military torture technique. We also met with a large animal vet when we were out in Kansas, and he was saying how important this topic is for farmers and ranchers because the animals will also be disrupted, their sleep will be disrupted by the light exposure, and it will cause them to stop their mating cycles. Kristen and I don't really know how to explain that. We say that it'll affect your cow's libido. We don't know how else to explain that. But that's the way it is. So it will affect your mating cycles. They will stop breeding the way they normally do. They will not be as hungry, they will stop eating. And so he was even explaining to us that when they start seeing issues with the cattle, or whatever it is, horses, we were dealing with a horse farm in Virginia, because they are known around the country for their great horse breeds. And so they have to come in and they have to do tests, and they will also test the cortisol levels in those animals, and then they'll have to put sleep timers on with the lights in the barn, make sure they get enough darkness, hours of darkness. So this kind of light pollution in a region like this is not only going to be bad for human health, but it's also going to be very dangerous for your animals. And this is a problem because of the dairy production, livestock and dairy production here as well. So lighting controls are important, but the problem is they can't just turn it off. Just like with the tonal noise. They can't just turn it off. The only way to turn it off is to stop operations. And so the problem is, once they're up and operating, you don't control that. They will say to you up front, this is all we need. We just need, we hear it all the time. We need 30 watts. Okay, then they get approved for 30 watts. Actually, it was like 300. But then we're gonna just go ahead and develop that. I mean, this is what's happening. They just tell you what they are gonna do up front, and then they get the permits and the approvals, and then they just go do whatever they're gonna do. And now there's no stopping it. Who are they answering to? The regulatory agencies are not keeping them in check. Your local health departments, they don't even know what to do with this. Your permitting departments, right? They're not sure how to handle permits right now. So this is a real problem, and these are some of the individual human, animal, and environmental health impacts that we're seeing. And like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term RCTs, or randomized controlled trials. It's the gold standard of all tests and trials because we have good placebo groups and control groups. Well, when it comes to the data center, the hyperscale data centers, they're so new that we have not had time to do full-blown RCT studies. But what we do have scientifically that we can rely on as exposure scientists, we have observational data and in real-time data. So we have real-world studies going on with cause and effect and correlation that we know, and now we know to the point that we have entire cities and towns suing data center companies because of the harms the entire towns are experiencing, the entire townspeople are experiencing. It's all the same. So that is called observational study, and we need to be wise and we need to learn from that before we become the next Dowagiac, Michigan, or the next Festus, or the next Texas town, because they're all really struggling. Or like in the Northeast, they're being told, oh, guess what? You're not going to have an electrical company anymore. We don't know who you're going to get your power from, Lake Tahoe, but it's not going to be from us, because we're going to go over here and work with these data centers instead. They're much more lucrative. So this whole town, Lake Tahoe, is struggling now. They don't know where they're going to get their power, and these residents might have to leave. Well, who's going to buy their homes? Property values are plummeting because of this. People are walking away from homes. Kristen and I were just talking about this. The equity we have in our homes, if we had a data center being built in our backyard, guess what? We're going to lose that equity overnight. And you're going to end up having to walk away because of the exposures and the hazards. You can't stay there. This is what we're seeing all across Kansas. The way they're trying to set up data centers across Kansas, they're pocketing these towns in like this. And we're telling them, my gosh, you guys are all going to end up having to leave. You're not going to be able to live here. And so it's a problem, and we need to rein this in before it's too late, because the damage that we're seeing is permanent and it's irreversible. Because we will not have the kind of money that it will take to reverse engineer that problem. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to give it back to Kristen here to talk about why we need a pause. Or alternative, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But first I wanted to, before we shift, is you're maybe asking yourselves, what started this reckless rollout? Like all of a sudden overnight, if you're on social media, you see, at least my algorithm is showing me lots of communities standing up against, oh my gosh, like this farmer was struggling and sold his land. And if there's going to be bailouts, I feel like the farmers are the ones that need it. But they're not being given the proper information, and this is a false bubble. This is going to burst because we do not need the amount of hyperscale data centers that they claim to need to store your Amazon or your iCloud photos. This is about AI computing, and a lot of it is used for military issues. That's why they're able to bypass certain rules. But when we uncovered that, I believe it was Oracle, OpenAI, Meta, had a $525 billion contractual agreement that they would work together and roll out a certain amount of hyperscale data centers, and if they're not rolled out by a certain date, the financial penalties are astronomical. Well, that's not my problem, because you should never cut corners because of your individual profits. So again, the existing computing that we have is doing just fine. And I hear people say, well, Kristen, you're a hypocrite because you use ChatGPT to track your macros for your weight loss or for your fantasy football, or your daughter's homework that I don't know how to do anymore. That's not me being a hypocrite, because I'm not against AI, I'm against the false narrative on how to roll out these hyperscale data centers. That's like saying I shouldn't eat food because I prefer regenerative farming and don't want glyphosate on my food. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds to say, like, I can't use Facebook or X because I don't want a hyperscale data center? We already have modular, we have smaller data centers that are already doing this, again, like Tammy said, for decades, and we've had no major issues. You probably didn't even realize this. You probably thought they were like server farms, as people used to call them, or IT rooms, but they've been around for a while. So that's what is behind this giant push, is this false, it's going to be an IPO, and it's a false bubble, and it is going to burst. Now, I'm not an economist, but we sat on a panel in Virginia with an economist that broke down all the false narratives that were false promises attached to the rollout of the hyperscale data centers. So we talked about how we already have existing technology. I kind of want Tammy to shortly dive into, we talked about how they're no longer needed and they're dinosaurs, these hyperscale data centers. I just want to say, okay, I'm 44, so I do remember the old school TVs that you had to go up to and turn, and then we had the huge ones on wheels, and now I can watch a video on my smartwatch. So technology is ever evolving, and with that ever evolving technology, it also includes this type of computing.
Well, I'm 10 years older than her, and I remember the tinfoil on the bunny ears. Anybody remember that? And you had to get up to change the station. Actually get up. Okay. Oh, the good old days. I really do wish we could go back to Mayberry, but you know what? We can't. So that's where we're coming from is, yeah, it would probably be better for all of us if we could, but that's not going to happen. AI is here to stay. We're not going to put it back in the bubble. So what do? We focus on the newest technologies, and we focus on the most responsible way to utilize it for our jobs, use as tools, things like that. We have to, right? Safely, responsibly. We have to be open as board members. We have to be open and willing to hear from a multidisciplinary team of experts. Not just one engineer who tells you what you want to hear. Not just lobbyists and executives who are going to promise you the moon. That is really dangerous, and as an elected official, whether you sit on a local board, a planning commission, a zoning commission, a county commission, city township board, or if you're a state legislator, we know, because we have gotten so heavily involved in politics, on the promises they are making to you and what you're being heard. Heck, we were involved in a recall against an entire township board in a little farming community in Michigan called Green Charter Township, when a Chinese battery plant tried to come in and set up a new battery plant in this agriculture farm area. And we found out through FOIAs that every single one of those township members was dealing with backroom deals, making backroom deals for 2 years. They had all signed NDAs, and they were all getting millions of dollars for what they were doing. And their community was completely in the dark. They were operating with no transparency. They were not representing the people that they were elected to represent. And that's a real problem, because NDAs are not uncommon in real estate. Because I did some commercial and investment real estate just for my own retirement. And that was just kind of a side thing. Well, it's not uncommon when you're working with a client, a hotel developer, who wants to buy this farmer's land and put a hotel on it next to the highway. It's not uncommon for me to have to sign an NDA so I don't tell anybody else about that, because their competition might find out this farmer's willing to sell and go swoop in there and offer them $1 million or $2 million more and get it. So it's not uncommon. That's what NDAs are for, the business world. Okay, no elected official should ever be signing an NDA and working in the dark with other people on things that they're trying to bring into their community or their county or their state, and keeping their constituents in the dark. That is so unethical. It's actually a violation of their oath, because they are sitting in the seat that they were elected to sit in that represents the people. And yet we see them acting with self-interest all over this country. And we are just absolutely shocked at how money changes people. The integrity goes right out the window when you're getting a promise of $1 million. It's shocking to us. because we don't operate that way. We love America, and we love our communities and our freedoms more than money. If we don't have our freedoms, what is all the money in the world going to do for us? Right? But I'm serious. I'm being very serious about that. And so we'll tell you the solutions with getting everybody recalled, because we've been involved in some recalls, and we actually got every single one of those board members recalled and replaced with a member of that community who cared about that community more than their own money. So that's a solution, right? But that's what is starting to happen all across this country right now. So we need to take a pause. We just need to hit the brakes here. And this is why we've been working with different state legislative bodies, county commissions, even local communities all across this country who are putting in a one-year moratorium. We are very much in favor of a one-year moratorium that gives the board members time to call in experts. And I don't mean some expert who's going to tell you what they're paid to say. Because I went up against I forget the name of the company, coming in right here to North Dakota, Oliver County. What was the name?
Of the DataCenter?
Yeah.
Applied Digital.
Applied Digital.
And then NextEra is also buying up land.
Oh yeah, NextEra. See, they're working with energy companies and utility companies because that's public. You can't utilize eminent domain for anything that is private. So if we have energy companies and utility companies involved, we can actually take land, including farms, through eminent domain because it's for public infrastructure. This is what's happening in Georgia Power. They're just gobbling up homes, ranches, using eminent domain. So we need to take a pause, and we need to get some real experts in place, like from a multidisciplinary approach and review. It's not a new concept, it's what we've always done in the medical field, in the public health field. Kristen and I work with a multidisciplinary approach and review with virologists, with epidemiologists, with doctors, with nurses, other healthcare workers, people like us who work in industrial hygiene, who do the testing and the sampling, right? So that's called a multidisciplinary approach and review, and our government has totally abandoned it. And now they're listening to the experts who are paid to say what somebody wants them to say. So when they found out that I was coming into Oliver County, they quickly called in their own expert that was on their payroll. Shocker. To say whatever they wanted them to say. This is a real problem. And we have to recognize what is happening. If you're a local elected official, be open-minded to the fact that our government agencies from the smallest township and local levels all the way up to the federal government is in bed with big corporations, big energy, utility companies, big tech, big pharma, big media, big banking, and they are controlling everything. But you know what? The more localized the issue is, the more power we, the people, have. That's why it is so important for our elected officials to remember whose seat they sit in. And it is so important to get good people on those boards, from the local boards all the way up into federal Congress. People who care. And I'm not talking about parties. I'm not talking about liberal, conservative, and this has nothing to do with politics. This has everything to do with the American way of life. This is not how we do things in America. And so Kristen and I are just alarmed at what we're seeing. And this is why we're telling people, look, if you care about your communities, if you don't want to lose the culture of your communities, and you want to maintain local control, you can do that through zoning. But you've got to have elected officials who are not able to be bought. And that's so important. So if they're not listening to you, people ask us, well, they're not listening and they're already building this data center. Now what do we do? Recall. You need to start a referendum and a recall. And you need to replace them. And you can't stop everyone. Some of them, we're going to lose some of the battles. Some of them are already underway. But just because they put a shovel to the ground and they're moving dirt does not mean you can't stop it. Because that's happening in a lot of places without permitting approval yet. So if you can get your board members to listen and not approve those permits, you can still stop it even if they own the land and they're moving dirt. Okay, so these are things that we as Americans need to understand. Our way of life, our health, Our environment, our fresh water is at stake here, right? That's all that matters, and that's why Kristen said this is the most unifying thing we have seen across this country, and we love that, because it's bringing Americans together for the preservation of our way of life, of our farmlands, our food source, which to me is a national security issue. Just saying. And I say everywhere I go, I love to eat your steaks, so I want you to keep those cows healthy. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Kristen to talk just a little bit about public health, and then we're going to get into some planning and zoning solutions for you.
I just have to say that that meeting that Tammy was talking about, I can't remember, I had something else I was doing, so I couldn't join her, but I'm the spicy one in the group, and whoever that attorney was, I heard he lost his election. So karma, but you know, we always say, I just want to say in a side note, they try to beat us down, or, I don't know, question our credentials, but you guys can fact check all of us. Everything we're saying is accurate, especially when we're talking about the exposures, and nobody can question the conversations that we've had along the way with a bunch of community members. But you may be thinking we brought up OSHA and we brought up the Environmental Protection Agency. Again, those agencies are more designed to protect the worker. And what do we do now when those occupational hazards are bleeding into our communities? Well, I have to tell you, first of all, if there's an elected officials in here, do not be risk averse. That is the biggest issue with fighting this. Stop being risk averse, okay? You have to grow a pair and stand up and say, hey, this is not exclusionary. We have issues. This Amazon warehouse is not bringing on the same human, environmental, and animal health impacts as a hyperscale data center. And they're always afraid of being sued. Well, crowdfund, because you can beat them with the right people on your side. All you have right now in your state and local levels to help you are your local and state health departments. Again, this is new to them, so they're going to be a little confused, and they should know to reach out to industrial hygienists and acoustic engineers. The acoustic engineers are the ones who come out and do those constant sound studies that we're talking about, which unfortunately can't be done unless something is already erected and operational. Now the issue is, we came across this last night where there's already a hyperscale data center being developed, and they said, what can we do? Well, unfortunately, once it's approved, there's contracts, and they're already building. There's not much you can do. You have to be a victim in order to, I'm not a lawyer, but I know this as an expert witness in a lot of lawsuits, is you have to be a victim to something to take action. So if one goes up and you guys can't stop it, the second you start to feel that vibration, and you can go out and rent these little sound level meters, but you gotta switch it, like I said, off of A, and put it on C and Z. The apps on your phone won't work. Once you have the presence of this hazard of the tonal noise, you immediately contact, again, your local and your state health departments. And I deter from class actions, but you can do more tort claims, but collectively unite together and take legal action. Because historically in this country, we have seen it. Because a lot of times, this is my biggest pet peeve in this profession, and I saw it mostly in the government, ironically, is I would tell someone, hey, you're doing this operation, you need to, I'll just give you an example. So you're sanding with a pneumatic sander on a piece of metal that has cadmium. That's a known OSHA expanded standard, are carcinogenic metals dust. And they have like a vacuum cleaner hose to capture the dust when they were sanding. And I said, no, you need to get a pneumatic sander that has a HEPA bag attached. You need to have secondary containment, meaning what they were wearing for PPE and respiratory protection. They had staging areas so they weren't going home and hugging their wife and kids and getting carcinogenic metals dust on their children. I was told that cost too much money. Well, guess what? The OSHA citation costs a hell of a lot more. So if you do things right, and there are companies that do, they have people like us embedded in their companies, or they contract people like us, and they say do a job risk analysis and a health risk assessment. Your problem with these hyperscale data centers is there is no review. And that is, like Tammy said, that is supposed to happen. So as we arm you with this information, Like I said, you can go out and fact check us and find the same information, or even reach out, because right now, case precedence is being developed. Like Tammy said, there's 2 towns or cities around the country that are actively suing because of that tonal noise. You do not understand how bad it is until you're sleeping next to one. So you have your health departments, you have legal aid that you can utilize once the hazard is present, and get to know an acoustic engineer. Even people that work in music studios, there's acoustic engineers in there. You have to gather the data to once against their data, and I'm telling you right now, they're not doing sound studies on the tonal noise. They're just checking on that DVA audible noise. So, just remember, the very agencies designed to protect the worker aren't necessarily there to protect you in your home, but they are supposed to keep those industrial operations from having those health hazards bleed into your home. So be respectable, but administratively and peacefully stand up. Get ahead of it now, and if you even hear rumblings of them being put in, again, check for those diesel air permits. And already start contacting your local and your county and your state officials. Put them on notice that you're going to be reaching out to them. They're supposed to represent you and protect you, regardless of what side of the aisle that you are on. So the whole goal of us talking to you isn't to scare you. I don't sugarcoat anything, but I try to do it in a way in which non-technical people can understand this very technical data of our field. Okay, we're just the exposure scientists, and our job is to protect human and environmental health, and I guess now animals. Because we're actually helping with the Nashville Zoo. But so what can you do? Like, what's proactive that you can do? And like Tammy said, she hit on that zoning earlier, but if there's anything else you want to add to that as we close out, I just want to provide you all with hope. And if you have a notepad, write this down. There's another one of us. It's our colleague, and he is the most highly credentialed person in our profession, and his name is Stephen, spelled with a PH. His name is Stephen Petty, P-E-T-T-Y. Stephen Petty lives in both Florida and Ohio, and he has testimonies on YouTube. So if you want to use another resource outside of the 2 of us for people that don't believe you, or send them to your legislative body, again, Stephen Petty, he's testified, I believe, in the Ohio legislative session.
Okay, so I want to give you guys some things that you need to know about planning and zoning, how you can just kill it with planning and zoning. So one of the problems that people have experienced is when their master plan for their township or their city or their county does not match up with the actual zones that you are operating under. That happens sometimes because when a master plan is put together, originally that board will say, okay, here's where we want to go. Eventually, we would like to have some industrial space, some commercial space. We've got agriculture, we've got residential, we've got light commercial, light industrial. And so you might have those things listed in your master plan because that's where the planning committee at that time wanted to eventually go. But if you look at the zones that you actually have established in your city, township, community, if they do not match up with what is in your master plan, you can be sued. Some of you have probably heard what happened in Saline Township, Michigan, where this was the Starlink. Stargate, that's right. Elon Musk. Starlink, we all know that one. Stargate, the Stargate project in Saline Township, Michigan. This is a small rural farming community of 3,000 people in this township. They did not want a data center. The entire board voted against the data center. And the Stargate company sued the township and said, we want a data center here. We want your land. And they won. And the reason they won, this is why Kristen said, don't be risk averse, though. Don't be afraid of that. Because if you do things right, they can't make you do anything. What the problem was Saline Township in their master plan, even though they were nothing but agricultural, that's all they were, farms, they had listed industrial zoning, but they didn't actually have any industrial zoning. that was set aside. So the township lawyers saw that and they went after that. And they said, you're discriminating against us. Because you said you have industrial land in your master plan, you're supposed to, and you don't. So this farmer here is willing to sell their land to us, and we want it turned into industrial. And the township lost. I mean, it's terrible. Of course, our governor was out there with her shovel, and with who else was out there? I don't even.
Sam Altman.
Oh, Sam Altman, yeah, out there. You know, they're all out there celebrating while the townspeople are crying. And they just lost their farmland, the characteristics. This is a massive hyperscale center too. So what we learned from that though is they can't make you, even if they have a farmer willing to sell their land and they want that, if there is other industrial zone, first of all, if there's an industrial zone listed in your master plan, and you have some identified industrial zone in your county or your township, that's the only place that they can go. And even then, only if they can fit within that footprint. They cannot make you take land that is currently zoned one thing and turn it into another thing. They can't, that's illegal. That's why we've said, the more local the issue is, the more power we the people actually do have. They cannot make a board do anything different. Okay, so look at your master plan, look at the zoning you actually have, make sure it lines up. And if you do, if it is in alignment, you're good. If you have some agricultural land and a developer wants it, they can't make you change it. They cannot force you to change it, okay? We have good court case precedent for that. So, I think that's it. Are we out of time now? Are we ready for the Q&A? Is that what we're going to? Okay. Yes?
Thank you, ladies, so much. Who in the room learned something new? What did you guys all think? If you could please just give them a round of applause. Pleasure, and my organization, Health Freedom North Dakota, is absolute pleasure to host events such as this with these ladies. I don't know if you've heard this, though. They do not receive any payment from our organization when they come and do these events. They are literally donating their time and their energy to do 4 events across the state of North Dakota, starting last night and going till tomorrow night. So we truly appreciate you guys, sharing your love and support for them, and of course, them donating their time to us. They're actually losing money because of the fact that they could be at home working with their own clientele. So again, if you could please give them another round of applause. By telling you that our organization actually took a huge gamble to host these 4 data center town hall informational meetings. We do not have the funds to actually cover the costs for their travel. And so if you do believe that their knowledge and expertise was top notch, please make a donation to our organization. If just 45 people would be willing to donate $100, we would actually break even on the costs we've already incurred. As I said earlier, we do not receive government grants or donations from large organizations. Your donation is 100% tax deductible. So thank you again, and I'm going to have Tara take it over to moderate our Q&A. So please, if you have questions, raise your hand. Actually, where is that other microphone?
Yeah.
Does everybody know how to donate?
Oh, so to make a donation, thank you, Tara. To make a donation, you can do that simply by visiting our website at www.healthfreedomnd.org/donate. I believe there's multiple options there for you. You can also Venmo us or PayPal us, Health Freedom North Dakota. You should see our logo there to know that is us. And then, of course, you can, we do have a cash box donation right over there. And like I did mention earlier, if you would like to get in on that raffle, please let us know that you donated $100 so that we can send you one of those great beanies that have our logo on it. All right, I'll pass it back over there.
Do you want, yes. It doesn't. All right, friends. Again, thank you again to Tammy and to Kristen for the knowledge that they have shared. Please, if you didn't catch it, the donation box is there. If you didn't get how to donate, you can also find Health Freedom North Dakota on Facebook or connect with any of us and we will get you set up. So we will move into a Q&A. Before we do that, how many of you are local here to the Bismarck or Mandan area? Okay. And how many of you are outside, you're from another county, another region? Okay, wonderful. So I can absolutely attest to what these ladies are talking about. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm from the Mercer County and Oliver County area, and we are absolutely dealing with them taking and moving, rezoning agricultural land to industrial land. And so if I can just give you a visual, this is not to scale whatsoever, but what we are looking at right over here in neighboring Oliver County and Mercer County, we have agricultural land that is surrounded by agricultural land with the town of, in this case, Center, North Dakota, just 30 miles from here, a school in a town right here. That hyperscale data center, they didn't even give up, we had a moratorium in place. They dropped the moratorium. We do not even have an ordinance for a data center in place. There is no protection for Oliver County residents, and our commissioners in Oliver County, 2 out of the 3 we have, are asking Applied Digital for permission. Is it okay with you if you do that? Is it okay, would you be willing to do a sound study, which isn't gonna be enough because it's DBA? They're asking Applied Digital for permission. So we have this land that was sold, and then we're being told, and this is also happening in Mandan, so like be prepared, well this is what's coming, this is happening in Mandan. It's my understanding that NextEra has bought land all over, like several different locations in North Dakota, is that correct? And one of those locations being very close to one of the Mandan schools? Is it a mile away?
No, a quarter of a mile.
A quarter of a mile away from one of the Mandan schools.
They want to shorten it, I think, from a half mile to a quarter mile because there's some ordinance right now. And they want to go, you know how far that is? 2 blocks.
Yeah, so it is exactly. So this is what we're looking at, folks. This is in different locations in North Dakota. This is, where were you just, how is it, the Harwood? They're right by, and you can speak to this too. So we've got this agricultural land with towns near it. This is where the hyperscale data centers are going. And we have people, agricultural producers surrounding this entire area. And there's literally no protection that's strong enough in place. The same thing is about to happen in Mercer County. Because these companies come in, they buy the land, and then they basically say, we own the land, you can't tell us what to do, we'll do whatever we want. And then they switch the agricultural zoning to industrial zoning and move forward. So this is happening. We will let you know how we can, I mean, this is a grassroots effort, of course. We are all learning this as we go, so thank you again for your information. We'll open it up for questions, but here's what I would ask. If you do have a question, we'd like that question into the microphone or people won't be able to hear it. So if you are at all willing or able to come to the front, please ask your question that way. Otherwise, if you can ask the question and it's short enough, one of us will repeat it so that, because this meeting is being recorded for the benefit of your being able to go back and listen for your own reference, but also to share with your friends, your neighbors, your legislators, your county commissioners, city commissioners, everybody who needs to hear this information to help you protect yourself. All right, question, yes?
I think long before we are become sensitive to things like tonal noise and light pollution, we'll feel the increase in our electric costs. Can you touch on that?
So the question you're asking, and then I'm going to pass this over to Tammy and Kristen. So you're also, not only are we going to feel the effects potentially of the tonal noise exposure and the audible noise and the lights, but also the cost with energy. Is that the question? Okay, perfect.
So like I said, I've done my job at a large electrical utility company, so I'm very familiar with how this is passed on to the consumer. And living in Michigan, our energy companies every year are asking for a massive increase, while we have one of the weakest rates in the country. So yes, the cost does get passed down. And again, when we were in Virginia on that panel, the economist went over the increases that he has seen just around Virginia because they have to repair lines, overhead, underhead. By the way, the companies that make the transformers is very, do you remember like during COVID, they had certain companies switch to making ventilators? Well, there's other companies now that are just making the transformers. So there's already like a long wait. And then the demand raises costs, and that cost, not just on the operation of the hyperscale data centers, gets passed on to you because their overhead is also increasing. But they won't be transparent about it. I haven't seen a single electrical company share why they have to increase their rates tied to this.
Ms.
Can you speak right into the microphone?
Could you elaborate on how many acres was bought up in Mercer or
How many acres was that, Tara, that were bought up?
2,000 acres in Mercer County. They want, in Mercer County, they're planning for, NextEra and Basin are together in this. They are planning for a 1,500 acres, they've already got 2,000, okay, so say it again.
2,000 acres more after the.
Here, you just say it. Yeah.
They've purchased 2,000 acres of agricultural land. And Pardon? Okay. They've purchased 2,000 acres of agricultural land to date, and they're planning for another 2,000 acres. So it'll be one of the biggest data centers in the country.
And I've been told it's enough power to power, it'll need enough power to power 1 million homes. To put that into context. So it's, and that's just the start. So, and then if you're not familiar, NextEra has this plan, you can look right on, the link is on my Facebook page, but it is their CEO is talking about what their plan is and where they want to go with this. So everything that these ladies talked about is correct. They come in, and they do the first project, and then they go to the next project, and they just start taking over. Because again, if they start here, these other people are not going to be able to stay here. So then they just continue to buy land so that they can expand. I've had numerous people in the last couple of days call me from this area and say, we got approached by NextEra to purchase our land.
Don't do it.
We were approached in Evans County
Yeah.
for NextEra, if they could come on our planning and zoning board to help us on our planning and zoning.
So if you didn't know this either, yeah, so we as concerned citizens in my communities, just like you as concerned citizens here and in your own counties, we have worked to give suggestions, thanks to these ladies, for strong ordinances in place, strong setbacks. I mean, just like with wind towers. So strong setbacks, and for the love, put them in next to industry, existing industry. We have to have them because apparently we cannot say no to these companies, but if they need to come to an area, my opinion is that they belong next to existing industry, not in the middle of agricultural land, not by schools, not by communities, not by homes, which is exactly what they're talking about. But this is exactly, my ranch is about to be surrounded. So what happened when we as concerned citizens went forward and worked to give suggestions to have strong ordinances in place, keep in mind, these companies, Applied Digital and NextEra, I'm speaking about those ones because that's local to me. You might have other companies that have come in, but they have been able to also give their recommendations to commissioners, to planning and zoning committees, that then completely weaken the ordinance. So that's exactly what has happened in both Oliver County and Mercer County. I would imagine that's going to happen here. So be prepared that industry gets to come in and give advice, which is going to completely weaken the ordinance to give people very little protection. Now, when it comes to the commissioners, I will say, I can't say whether or not some have received compensation, but I have heard that some actually have received threats. Threats. Yeah, you had a question.
Yes, first comment, thanks for coming. The first comment is, this has been going on for a long time. When you think about the water and the water usage, I was out in DC over 10 years ago fighting against WOTUS, which is Waters of the US. And if you don't know what that is, it's what they wanted to do is claim all waters as the property of the US. Well, how does that work? It starts with any navigable body of water would be waters of the US. But if you have a rainstorm and it causes a puddle that runs into a ditch, that runs into a stream, that runs into a river, that runs into a larger river, that's a navigable body of water, that all of that water would be waters of the US. So this rainstorms that we get, that's all waters of the US. So that's something to be very careful about. But my other question is, they say that these data centers are already obsolete because of quantum computing. Can you guys address that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Tammy, but I will say we have met with, over email. We actually met a large animal veterinarian who brought us to this individual named Jay Valentine. And there is other computing called quantum and edge computing. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Tammy.
Yeah, so Fractal and Edge, you can look that up. Fractal is the name of the company. We've learned a lot about some of the alternative solutions out there. Some of the alternatives right now, you can actually take something the size of a dining room table and compute the same thing that a smaller size hyperscale data center would compute. The size of a dining room table, that already exists. Like, the hyperscale data centers are obsolete already. So the next step, then they're going into space. There's a race to get them into outer space. Well, if you have something the size of a dining room table, it's not real hard to fly it to outer space, right? And so that's the race right now that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and some of the others in the space race, that's a lot of what we're doing in outer space right now. And that's perfect because they're self-cooled. They're not contaminating people or animals or the environment. There's a lot coming in undercurrent cooling, geothermal cooling, and quantum computing is its own animal. It is something completely different than the type of computing we have right now. But companies like Microsoft and Meta, they're heavily investing in it and looking into it, and because they're realizing this changes everything. Quantum computing changes typical computational algorithms. It doesn't work the same. And it comes to much faster conclusions and much more accurate conclusions. So it's going to get really interesting really fast because that technology is already being developed and the big tech giants are already turning towards that. That's why we've heard them say, this is going to be obsolete. We're not going to pay millions of dollars to maintain this when we've got this. So what are we even doing? Like, let's understand that and just stop this craziness right now before we do some very serious negative permanent damage that we are not going to be able to afford to undo.
I just want to quickly add to that. That's one of the benefits when we're going around the country is like sometimes things are just presented to us. Like we're talking to a large animal veterinarian who happens to be tonight, and then we got together over email, and then I'm also a media contributor, and those media people ask me if I've heard of this. So it's kind of like 6 degrees of what Kevin Bacon that they used to say. It's kind of crazy. We just pick up little breadcrumbs of information along our travels. So if there's anything you guys know, please share that with us when we leave here. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, I'm getting blinded.
Thank you.
I don't have questions, but I have personal testimony. I live in Mandan, sorry about that. I know Tammy before I met Kristen, but I want to tell you a personal thing that many of you know here. Many of you know my story. It pertains to my son, who this affects, and his wife. He would be here to tell his personal testimony, but they just had a baby 2 days ago. So I want to say, if you don't think it's going to affect you, it will at some point, or somebody you know. I also want to say, as a former RN cardiac nurse, I understand tonal noise. I understand all the health effects this is going to be in your neighborhood, our water, everywhere. and it doesn't go back. And I also want to let you know when Basin Electric, which my son worked for 10 years, he's not, this is nonpartisan, he is not against data centers, just like Tammy and Kristen said. This is not about that at all. It's what, it's about many other things. But when I went to the Basin Electric open house with NextEra, there was a group of us. My husband and I attended. We looked like other ordinary citizens asking questions. And when I was visiting with the NextEra, which is the first booth we went to, I asked the project manager for a card. Can I see your card? And we were just visiting, and I was asking her questions, and I said, what do you think of North Dakota? And I quoted this on a couple of different radio stations. Nonpartisan, just asking her, what do you think of North Dakota? What brought you here? A job. Okay, what is your degree? Marketing. Okay, well, what do you know about farming? I'm a 6th-generation farmer family from Northeast North Dakota. My son is 4th generation that is farming that family farm. And she goes, nothing. And I said, tell me about data centers. How did you get that job? And she said, I applied, I got it. And I said, how do you do this job? She goes, I follow the scripts. I just follow the scripts, what they tell me to do. And so for that reason, I told this story to a couple different, they wouldn't let me go, they just let me listen or talk. And so they listened, they go, what the heck is she doing here? And her name is Stephanie Morales, and I'll tell the name because I need to tell names, and people, you guys need to know what's going on. She works for NextEra. She doesn't live up there, she lives in Bismarck, she can't wait to go back to Florida, she hates it here. Stephanie, if you're here, you know, back to Florida. Back to Florida. But more importantly, I was about 3.5 weeks out of a knee surgery, and I was sitting down in a chair at this, just like a chair at the open house, and Mr. Todd Brickhouse came over, and he goes, oh, did you hurt your knee? And I said, I just had surgery. He's kneeling on the floor, and he goes, I have a bad knee too, I'm going to need surgery. I'm visiting with him, we introduced each other, and we started talking. I had a bully pulpit cap on because I'm a golfer, and he asked me about that. What do you do? I said, I'm a nurse. Oh, my mom's a nurse. Everybody, we started talking, and I'll tell his name, Todd Brickhouse, CEO of Basin Electric. And then, just out of curiosity, I started asking, where is this data center going to go? And he goes, well, somewhere over there by the, we have a good chunk of land over there by the crossroads. I said, where is that crossroads? I shouldn't have played whatever I was doing. I was just trying to get information. He goes, well, when you leave Stanton, at the Stanton County Courthouse, you take a right and then a left and then another, and it's over there somewhere on the way to Beulah, because I go to Beulah for Basin Electric meetings, and I said, okay, but where is that data center going? He didn't know exactly where the crossroads were, and he didn't know Highway 200 or Highway 31, and all that. Okay, so my point was, he didn't really know that area, but more importantly, he did say, yeah, we're putting a gas plant, and I said, where's that going? And he said, well, we have room on Basin Electric land for that and the data center, which is industrial. And I said, why don't you just put it there? And he goes, because it would cost, quote, $300 million to move the dirt. And I said, isn't that kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what you're paying for these NBAs? And he goes, well, then, it's a sinkhole and nobody would insure it. And I said, oh my gosh, I think everybody could find somebody to insure this. Put it back on your industrial land and not take 2,000 to 4,000 acres of farmland. And that was that. It's already been decided. So I wanted you to know this story. It's going to be right across the road for my son and his wife from here to that train. And it's going to affect so many farmers up there. And does it affect me? Of course. I chose to host this because of all of these people that are being affected. And they've called a county commissioner called my son the sacrificial lamb of this data center. And it's very sad.
Yes, they do tend to follow the same playbook. So if you could learn from what's happened in Oliver County, and then it's what's happening in Mercer County and some of these other counties that already have a data center rolling in, please learn, because the playbook is the same. Do you have other questions? Yes?
Yeah, do you have an example of a data center, a hyperscale data center that you would think is a model that is working that's out there, or are you not for any hyperscale data centers? I mean, when you started, you said you were, so I just want to know if it was.
In the United States, we have yet to find a hyperscale data company that is doing anything correctly and safely. They're all following the same playbook. Now, in Europe, I did my own research and I was doing webinars, I think it was Norway.
Yes.
They are ahead of it. And they're using alternative cooling methods. They have smaller footprints. And instead of having to put in fans or water cooling, they take that heat and recapture it, and they're like heating homes and swimming pools. So they're way ahead of the engineering controls. They're taking the hazards and bypassing them in other forms of energy. But I've yet to see that anywhere in the United States. But again, like Tammy said, overseas, they have more of their boots on the neck of people that are trying to harm. That's why they also have different food regulations.
What about the light and the sound issues in Europe? Do they not have those issues over there?
I haven't assessed the hazards of all the data centers in Europe. I just know, I used to live there. They have way stricter health standards than we do. But they have stricter things in place. And they're smaller.
You can't comment on the sound. They don't have sound.
No, but I'm not seeing any complaints coming from Europe regarding this. Not to say that it doesn't exist.
The larger the scale, the louder this facility will be. So this is why we said that in Europe, they're not building these massive campuses to the level that we are here in the United States. So the smaller standalone data centers like we already have here, the traditional, the micro, the edge, they're not creating the level of sound because they don't have the number of servers. So the more servers that you have on racks, the more heat you're generating, the more HVAC cooling systems and things like that. So the fans and the noise is just affecting people miles away. So the smaller data center facilities are not creating the noise and they're not having the amount of light just because of the footprint.
So what is a safe distance from a data center, from a noise perspective to the residents?
Well, that's why we said in the beginning, you would have to show us. There is no one size fits all for that. Because you would have to show us the footprint, the facility. You'd have to show us the designs and the systems so that we knew what the cooling systems were. Are you relying on fans? Are you using air cooling? Are you using alternative immersion liquid cooling? I don't know. I can't just give you a one size fits all blanket answer for that. Plus, all these data centers come in different sizes. So I would need to know the size. I would need to know the design, the system. In addition, I would need to know what is around it and what is the topography and what is the land. Like in Oklahoma, I can't remember if you mentioned this today or earlier, in Oklahoma they have a lot of clay and it's very flat and it's very windy. So that total noise is going to be carried for miles. Okay, so in an area where it's maybe more hilly and there's more houses and more buildings, you're not going to have the same distance. So there's no one size fits all setback. This is why it's so important that we work with a multidisciplinary team with the environmental engineers, with the civil engineers, and with the design teams so that we can tell you, okay, for this particular facility, you show us the blueprints, you show us the designs, you show us the data, and we'll work with your design team as environmental engineers and we can help you come up with that.
And a key term to look at is sound propagation. Sound propagation, when we talk about how erratic tonal noise behaves and travels, again, you can look up that term of tonal noise plus sound propagation.
Virginia? Yes, question.
We're told to bring these in, it's going to create a bunch of jobs. Can you talk about exactly?
Yes. So the question is, we're told it's going to bring a bunch of jobs. Is that true?
No.
During construction, there's lots of jobs, but a lot of them are coming from out of state. And in certain states, the trades men are saying, we are not going to help you, because they don't want it in their backyard either. And nobody wants this. I don't want it in your backyard, I don't want it in my backyard. I want better technology. But the jobs, they promise all these jobs. Now, I am saying this, every hyperscale data center, again, can go from 10,000 square feet to what, 200,000 square feet? It's just a different category size. The issue is, the average data center has 7 to 10 employees. The most I've ever seen was 20, and they're just IT people. And a lot of times, they're actually coming in here from out of town. How many people do you have here that work at this type of IT? Probably not a lot. They bring them from outside of your areas. And the only people that are usually hired locally are people that are doing janitorial services and small repairs. Landscaping.
And I want to add to that, because stop and think about it. What is the goal of AI? To replace human beings. So don't fall for that. Oh, we're going to create all these jobs. No, they're not. Not post-construction. We have a big data center in Grand Rapids, Michigan, by where we live. It's called Switch. All the promises, we heard it all. It's been there for a little while now. They promised 250 jobs through the local Economic Development Corporation. Do you know how many manifested? 29. 29. We did all that for 29 workers.
I will add, I actually have to amend my answer. It does create jobs. It creates jobs by making you all into little accidental activists. Yeah. It's not a good paying job, but it's creating jobs. And now you're getting the average citizen running for office.
Yes, right.
We'll take one more question.
Right.
Is there any point?
I hear you say that local and state public health people should be involved. Where do they go for information and training?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, you're asking when we talked about go to local and state health offices and where do they get their training? Well, they should know about our field, but whenever there's new hazards, I don't expect, and I'm not going to shut them down or knock them if they don't know about this, but they definitely send their employees to conferences and webinars. But we have the world at our fingertips, and all they need to do is just go on social media or even ask AI. They'll rat themselves out. They need to know the hazards that are presented, and you have observational studies all around the country, and they need to look into these health hazards. And when I heard how close a hyperscale data center is going to go to a school, well, now it's a whole different protected demographic of government school children. So while I don't want this near them, the people that are legislating over the area, they need to stand up and say, we're not going to harm these children, because you will impede their brain development, their behaviors, and God bless these teachers that are going to have a bunch of irritable children having behavioral issues, and they're going to come home and tell their parents and grandparents, I have a headache, it causes migraines. You will not be able to ignore the symptoms of vulnerable populations, and it will activate those health departments to dig deeper.
You ever talk to any public schools about that?
I have not specifically spoke to public schools about this, but I can tell you that a lot of our friends, colleagues, and people that come talk to us are teachers and school administrators. I will talk to anybody that wants to hear from us and give them resources. We are working on a resource guide. A lot of people ask us if we have like a one-stop shop. Well, to be honest with you, we barely have time to eat, so we're trying to chip away at this thing as best we can. Once we have this resource document, where basically everything we're saying, with some known studies, with some references, we're gonna give it to Alexis, and she can disseminate it through each county and get it to you guys.
There is, yes. All right, if you are not already aware, so get out your calendars or grab a pen, write this down. So there is at the state capitol here over in Bismarck, there is an AI and data center committee. They are having a public meeting. They are having a public meeting. It is in room 327B, as in boy. It is next week Wednesday. Who has the date? July 15th. Thank you. July 15th. So July 15th, which is a Wednesday, next week Wednesday, starting at 9 a.m. This says it's scheduled to go from 9 a.m. at Central Time to 4 p.m.
What room?
It is in room 327B as in boy. So it would be wise to show up. If you have something more to add to that? Just right now. No. If I can say, as someone who has shown up to a lot of my counties and my neighboring counties commission meetings, there are not enough North Dakotans in those rooms. We need to stop being North Dakota nice, and we need to stop assuming that other people are speaking on our behalf. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say to me, and maybe people say to you, Lexi, thank you so much for speaking for us. But in the eyes of the commissioners and those making decisions, they see us as 4 whiners in the room. We are not going to affect change, dear friends, unless all of you, look at this, you can automatically tell that we did not plan for enough people to come today. We have overflow in 3 separate places. You showed up and this is amazing. Give yourselves a round of applause. So at this meeting on Wednesday, plan for it. Clear your schedules, be in the room. Be in the room during your county commissioners' meetings. A moratorium is not going to protect you. In Alder County and in Mercer County, they had a moratorium for a few weeks or a few months until, in Mercer County's, I think, getting close to ready to drop theirs, was supposed to be for a whole year, but that's only until they get an ordinance in place, or until the commissioners vote to just drop the moratorium.
You need a state moratorium.
We need a state moratorium.
Yeah.
We need a state moratorium. Thank you.
Okay, so I did want to mention in Fargo last night, we did have quite a few elected officials in the room, and one in particular has connected with these ladies, Representative Morton, Desiree. She wants them to speak in front of the AI Data Center Committee, and so we are working to schedule that. So I just want to let you guys know that. Senator Hope, Majority Leader maybe? I'm sorry, I'm not all the way up to date on all that stuff. But we're talking to him as well so that they can speak with like a whole assembly as well. So just so you're aware of that. Yeah, and then we'll have Terry. You want to? Oh no, sorry. Okay, is there any elected officials in the room right now? If you could please just throw your hand up in the air and say hi. We truly appreciate you guys willing to take time out of your busy schedule to be here. So thank you.
That meeting at the Capitol, right?
The meeting is at, the one I mentioned for next week Wednesday is at the Capitol.
327B.
Now, I know that some of you, the wonderful thing about these town halls is that we are here to also share information. So if you did not already get your information on one of this form, or if you didn't sign up when you came in, if you would like to connect with Health Freedom North Dakota, the advantage of that is we can continue, again it's volunteer based, but to share information collectively so that people know what's going on. And we're not, Health Freedom North Dakota is not the only organization. If you're on Facebook, you can also look up Family Farms Before Data Farms.
DataCenter.
Family Farms Before Data Farms.
Oh, it's farm. Oh,
Yeah.
got it.
Yes, thank you. We want you to get connected. Another way to get to Health Freedom North Dakota, we have these Health Freedom regions. Another way to get plugged in. And if you didn't look in the back, all of these handouts are available on the tables by the door, back by the cookies. This little map on the back, this is just, I know that this is moving into this region. This is showing you the development right in Oliver County and Mercer County. These plans have been in the works for so long, and it is all connected, and they have the same playbook. So connect with other people to get information. Continue to listen to Tammy and Kristen's messages. They are telling you the side that the industry won't tell you. We want you to get connected and to continue to share ideas, share information. But if we do not show up at those commission meetings, again, it seems like we're just a few whiners, and most people, your lack of showing up and speaking out assumes that we're all just okay with hyperscale data centers being right next to our schools, disrupting our communities, and in the middle of agricultural land, surrounded by people who are raising and growing your food. So if you are not okay with that, or if you have concerns, or you want strong ordinances in place, make sure that your voice is being heard. Final remarks.
Thank you all so much. Oh, have a question?
There's a Mandan City Commission public service meeting on July 27th.
I'll repeat that. There's a Mandan City Commission. It's a planning and zoning meeting. What's the date, dear friends? July 27th at 5:30 p.m.
Part of that is that we want to cut the distance down from residential area by half mile to a quarter mile.
Where's the location of that meeting? City Hall. City Hall. And they're talking about lowering the... Got it.
Trying to shrink
Yeah.
a lot of things up on.
Any other meetings that we should be aware of that you know about? I mean, this is all public information. If it's a public meeting, you should find it on your city council page, county commissioners. Yes. What's that? Yeah. Thank you so much. Brenda, do we need to be out of this room at any time? Brenda? We do not? Oh, thank you. Is this your facility? Can you stand up, please? Thank you for allowing us into this space. Our wonderful hostess here at Signature Events, you do not need to leave yet. So if you want to continue the conversations, I know we all had stuff we wanted to still say. Chat amongst yourselves. You are not being kicked out of this room. Stay, get your questions answered, visit with friends. You know people who know people. And when you do leave, God bless and safe travels. Yeah.